So this is my hapatra vizier of poisons deck. It's very it's not too different from some other hapatra decks, but this one cares a lot more in particular about doing aristocrat stuff and kind of creating value over time. A lot of lists for hapatra are kind of combo-y and like more bracket 4 focused, and I wanted to build something more for bracket 3, so I've been tinkering with this. It doesn't use Yawgmoth, which a lot of other decks that use hapatra as a commander use as a win condition, and it has some silly cards in it. So first off, we have a bunch of basic lands. We have 7 swamps and 10 forests. I like the printings from the 2 Innistrad sets from a few years back. I think they work great in these colors, and they especially work great in Aristocrats decks. Then we have our non-basic lands. These are all for color fixing. We have a few things. I don't have a fetch land in here, and I'd cut a forest if I did. I just don't have one, so if there's any changes that you want to make to the deck, that's probably the one that I'd make first. Then we have our utility lands and MDFCs. Nesting Grounds is great. This lets you turn, like maybe in early game, sometimes you hit someone with hapatra early on to make a snake and put the token onto hapatra herself. This can make it so you're killing like a mana dork or something later down the line. Karn's Bastion is great. Proliferating in this deck is really, really good. It can turn a couple of lingering counters into maybe killing something, or even like a few snakes, and that's really good. Bajuka Bog, because graveyard decks are annoying, and you really, especially with how much like destroy removal is in here with like the -1/-1 counters, you really want to be able to keep those graveyards clear. There's a couple of other pieces of graveyard hate in this deck, and I think every deck should be running them because of how strong they can be if they're unchecked. Phyrexian Tower is wonderful. Having like a sack outlet on a land is always really good in these decks, and making extra mana is even better. Takenuma is pretty good. It's recursion if you need it, and otherwise it is just like a swamp, and that's, can't go wrong with that. And then the MDFCs, these are mostly good in pretty much every deck, but in particular, this deck likes Revitalizing Repast to be able to put an extra 1/1 counter if there's a pretty empty board state. Malakir Rebirth is good because there isn't a lot of protection for the commander in here, and Revitalizing Repast is good for that as well. And Boggart Trawler, again, with how much this deck is trying to control the board, like a Graveyard Matter deck, like recurring everything every turn is really bad for this. And then we have our ramp. There's a lot of ramp in this deck. Maybe a little bit too much. It might be good to cut a bit of this for card draw, but we have a Cultivate and a Soul Ring. These are pretty tried and true. And then we have some Mana Dorks. Devoted Druid is good in this deck because it lets you make a snake on demand, and that's great. Deathrite Shaman is great. Again, it's graveyard hate. It's targeted graveyard hate, so it's really convenient, and it's super cheap as well. Sakura Tribuilder, again, really good. You can recur this with a few other cards, and that's really strong. Farseek, Rampant Growth, Nature's Lore, all the good 2-cost green ramp spells. Ashnod's Altar is fun, especially with Pitiless Plunder. Those are both really good. This is more of a pet card for me, but I really do enjoy Overlord of the Hauntwoods, and it's really fun to bring this out turn 3 or hard cast it later on. And this deck doesn't have a lot of big bodies in it, and sometimes that's what you need to close out a game. So having like a 6/5 vanilla basically is not bad sometimes. Harrow is really good, and it is really good with Dreadtiller in particular, because you can Harrow, sack a land, bring it back with Dreadtiller, and you are probably going to have lands in your graveyard sometimes, but especially with like Dreadtiller in particular, if you have like an Evolving Wilds or like a Terramorphic Expanse, it's so strong. Chandler Initiate is really good. You play it, and it's a snake immediately, and you can make mana like a good amount, and that's good. It's 2 costs as well. It's really just a worse devoted druid, but it's not bad at all. Harvest Season. This is again more of a pet card, but if you make a bunch of snakes and swing out with them, suddenly you have like an extra 6 lands, and that's really fun. And then Wickersmith's Tools. This is like a 3-mana rock, so it's not great, especially in green, but it can, if you get it down early in the game, and it isn't removed, you can really just like explode in the late game with a bunch of 2/2s, and that is a way of closing out games quickly that this deck otherwise can sometimes lack. After this, we have our removal suite. Massacre Girl is more of a pet card, but it is easy to get it online if you need to remove a big threat because you're probably going to have a few tokens. Toxic Deluge and Damnation are just good black board wipes. Cankerbloom and Insidious Fungus are both incredible in this deck. It being in Golgari colors lets you bring back both of them if you need to. Proliferate is very strong with hapatra and 1/1 counters. Assassin's Trophy and Putrefy are just good, removal for the colors. Drown and Icor it's a good black removal spell, and it is also very good in this deck in particular with how it can sometimes pump out multiple snakes. And on a similar note, there's a Bog Slither's Embrace, which is another sorcery that will make snakes and kill creatures. Beast Within, classic green removal. You can't go wrong with a good Beast Within. Tragic Slip, Infernal Grasp, more generically good cards. Ulvenwald Tracker turns all of your snakes into like Doomblade pretty much, and it's really, really good. Playing this turn 1 and then making snakes throughout the game with hapatra, and then making like 5 creatures die with this like one guy that you play turn 1 is so good. Incremental Blight is not a great removal smell, but it is a fantastic way of making more snakes, and killing a few things and getting a few snakes is incredible value for like 1 card. So it does, oftentimes I find this card overperforms compared to how abysmal its text looks. And Wickerbraw Elder is it's kind of the opposite. It looks like it would be really good, but oftentimes this like ends up killing 1 or 2 things, and then against artifact decks it's great because you can reuse it over and over and over again, but otherwise it's not the best. Then we have the draw cards. There's a good amount of draw power in this, and a lot of this is like pretty heavy draw. Like a lot of these you're going to be drawing like 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 cards, and that's really good. Off-Nabbed Goat is fantastic. A lot of people will make the mistake of stealing this and then giving you 2 snakes because you're going to eventually take it back, and then you kill it after you take it back with like a sack outlet or something. Suddenly you've drawn like 3 cards off of it and made like 2 snakes, and especially if you have like a Village Rites or a Corrupted Conviction, suddenly you've drawn like 4 cards off of this thing really early on. It can be devastating. Dusk Urchins is a very strong card. It kind of needs a little bit to get online, but it is like a body that you can draw cards with, and that's pretty good. It keeps people from attacking you if the snakes already aren't, which is nice, and it is putting out damage early on. And with how this deck aims to win, that extra chip damage does add up over time. Sinister Gnarlbark, this card is really hard to pronounce, but it is really good. It's basically Phyrexian Arena, and you also get a snake, so it's really, really strong. This is one of the best cards you can play on turn 3, or even turn 2. Sometimes you like turn 1 Birds of Paradise or whatever, and you want to play this before your commander usually, even though hapatra is like a must-play card in this deck. Skullclamp is just like good in aristocrats and tokens decks like this, where you have a bunch of 1/1s. Each of your snakes now draws you 2 cards, and that's really good. Sign in Blood is like the 2-cost black draw spell. Theoretically, it can, you know what this card does, but theoretically you can like drain people with it. That might matter. Read the Bones is basically just bad Sign in Blood, but it's okay because it's still like scry 2, draw 2, and that's fine. Harmonize is even worse, but it is like draw 3. Realistically, there are other green draw cards that you can replace this with, or even good black draw cards that you can replace this with. But last is Massacre Girl, Known Killer, which reads a lot better than it is, but I'm talking a lot of trash about like these draw cards, but they're all like, this is still very good. And giving everything you have Wither is also very strong. Very fun card. After that, we have all of the cards that actually, like, primarily are interfacing with the 1/1 counters. You have these 3. These are like the 3 big, like, put a 1/1 counter on everything. Midnight Banshee is good because it ignores hapatra. Black Sun Zenith is good because it's very, very cheap. Contagion Engine is great because it also ignores hapatra, and actually it targets one person, but you can proliferate. And if someone has like a large board of decently sized creatures, if you have a lot of mana, you can play this and make like a bazillion snakes. Aberrant Return is a really fun card. Like bringing back a bunch of cards from every grave is always good, and it makes 3 snakes. And a lot of the time, playing this, the 3 snakes that you get are going to be better than whatever you're reanimating with it. Like, you'll bring back 3 creatures, and then the 3 snakes will somehow have more value. Necroskitter is a very fun, but also somewhat conditional card. There are ways of tutoring this out if you need, but this works in tandem with your removal to create more value with it. Persist is a great card. Bring back your best like value piece and make a snake. Unnatural Restoration is kind of similar, but it proliferates and it returns to hand instead of to field. The Ozolith is kind of like a reusable removal spell in this deck. You play it, and then if you have something with a -1/-1 counter that dies, you put it on someone else's thing. And you can target anyone's creature. It doesn't have to be yours. So if your creature dies with a -1/-1 counter, you can just like kill something. And that's really good. Nest of Scarabs is basically like a second hapatra. There are some instances, mostly with Black Sun Zenith and like the flight spell that like kills 3 creatures. There are some instances where this makes more than hapatra, but generally it's just a second hapatra, and that is very good. And then finally is how this deck actually aims to win. It's not finally, there's a couple of other cards, but this deck really does want like the drain abilities. Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat are classics. Grave Venerations is great because it fishes a bunch of stuff out of your graveyard. It makes you the Monarch, and this deck is lacking in draw power, so it really helps with that as well. Obelisk Spider is kind of like a reverse Zulaport Cutthroat, where when you make a snake, it deals damage because it deals damage when you're putting the counters. It also makes counters itself sometimes. This is really good against decks with flying because it has reach. And it makes it so if they're flying over the snakes, then they're attacking you, but maybe they'll think twice if you have an Obelisk Spider on the field because it has reach, and it'll permanently make it weaker. Cauldron of Essence is a fantastic card from Strixhaven. This card's really, really good. You sack a creature and you bring something back, and it is also like another Zulaport Cutthroat ability. And that's really, really good. And then Raids is just like the card ever. It does like everything ever. It sacks stuff, it gains you life, it hurts other people, it gives you cards. It's a sometimes it gets rid of annoying things that they need to get rid of because they're low on life. Just a phenomenal card, and you always have feel for it. Sometimes you can be mean and be like, okay, I want to draw the card and sack like a land or something. And with how much you ramp out in this deck, it's so, so strong. Absolute all-star card. Tutor this every time. Speaking of, there are a few tutors in this deck and also Bitter Blossom. These are just like generically good cards that don't have any other real categorization. These two both are more toolboxy, though this can be a finisher. And then Bitter Blossom is just like one of the best black cards printed for Commander. I mean, it wasn't printed for Commander. Commander didn't really exist as a thing, but one of the best like black enchantments that you can play in Commander, in my opinion. At least outside of like EDH cards, and I guess like you can make an argument that like Black Market Connections is just this but better, but I really enjoy it in this deck. It's more fuel for Skull Clamps and for sack outlets other than the Skull Clamp, and it's really good for having flying blockers, which hapatra normally has a bit of a gap with, like I talked about earlier. It makes more flying attackers as well, so you have more pressure that you can use to hit your opponents. It's just so good. I love Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom is such a fantastic card. And that's the whole deck. There are a bunch of tokens that the deck makes. My girlfriend actually drew these snake tokens. I'll link her Twitter in the bio and maybe her Instagram as well in the description. But and that's kind of the whole deck. There isn't a lot more to talk about. I don't think there's anything I need to change about it either at this point other than the land, so I think it's all good. Thanks for checking it out.